Well, hello there. Here we are on this beautiful Tuesday, and we are now entering into scene 2 of episode 4. All right. So if you remember last episode, we fell back asleep. We had this life-changing experience, this very powerful, transformative experience, and found ourselves in a place where we didn't quite know what to do with it. All these insights, and I made the metaphor of reading the entire encyclopedia of the universe and not being able to recall a single thing I had read. And knowing that some change needed to happen, and then attempting that change within the changing of habits, specifically waking up earlier and just having a habit of waking up at 5:45 a.m. every day. So we tried that, and it was the first day, great intentions. It was all set up so great, and then fell back asleep. So this is where we are picking up from the story. So let's just hop in here. So this is episode 4, The Space Between, scene 2, The Promise. I strolled into homeroom period at 8:05 a.m. I was known by many, but embraced by few. After trying so hard to fit in for so long, I was beginning to accept the fact that I was different. Naturally very introverted, I was a man of few words. I noticed that this led to a lot of assumptions from my peers. From the outside, I looked like your average jock with the C-point grade average, banking on my athletic career to carry me through high school and hopefully onto a decent college program. From the inside, I was a very intelligent kid with deep thoughts and a deep desire to be seen and understood that I played off by distancing myself from others. I was the kid in the back of the class that knew all the answers but never felt like sharing them, forever waiting for the rest of the class to catch up. I took my normal spot next to Shirley Truman and began pulling out my unfinished math homework that was due in a couple hours. Mr. Reynolds, our homeroom teacher, stood up from his desk looking at the back of the room where the entrance was. At the same time, a boy walked in. Everyone, including me, turned to see who it was. Mr. Reynolds spoke. "All right, class, I'd like to welcome our new student, Jonathan." He gave a sheepish wave with a coyote grin as he glanced around the room at all the new faces. Our eyes connected and we silently exchanged head nods. I could feel many eyes turning to me, surprised that I seemed to already know this new kid. A few moments later, the novelty passed and everyone returned to their normal operations. John was assigned a seat across the room from me. It seemed odd that he wasn't carrying a backpack. He just took out a mechanical pencil from his pocket and twirled it around as he subtly observed the room. There was only 10 minutes left before the bell rang, so I dove back into my homework. I was just finishing up when the bell sounded. As I was stuffing everything back in the backpack, I noticed a pair of worn Crocs step into my view. I traced my gaze up to see John standing there with his playfully serious expression I was now growing accustomed to. "What's up, bro?" he said as he reached his hand out to me. I reached mine out to meet his, and I stood up and swung my backpack around my shoulder. "Yo, dude, glad you made it. Pretty cool we have the same homeroom." As we started walking out the door into the hallway, I asked him what his first class was. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and glanced at it. "Wood shop with Mr. Love, room 137, he said. "Oh, nice. I have engineering class right down the hall from there. I'll show you where it's at." We started in that direction. After a couple minutes, I felt the urge to ask, "Where's your backpack? You don't need any books or anything?" "Nah, I already know everything," he replied with his coyote grin. I was thrown off for a moment before I got the joke. "I'm kidding," he said. "I still haven't gotten any of my textbooks, so I'm just freestyling today." "Nice," I said. "Me too, kinda. I woke up late, so I'm a little all over the place today. Woke up late, huh? He said with a curious and knowing look. Yeah, I told myself I was going to start waking up at 5:45 every day. I even turned off my snooze and set my phone across the room. It still didn't work. I fell back asleep. He paused for a moment, deciding what to say. Have you ever heard of a gong? He asked. A what? I replied. Like the thing you hit? He laughed. No, it's a practice I learned from one of my teachers. Basically, you commit yourself to doing something for 100 days straight. And if you miss a day, you have to start back at day 1. Whoa, I said. That sounds intense. Have you ever done one? Not a full one yet. Today is day 33 for me. I'm meditating 5 minutes every day. I paused for a moment, impressed. Maybe I should do that with waking up early every day. Maybe, he questioned. Why not just do it? He looked right at me and I felt my face warming up. We were approaching room 137. You're right, I said. I'm going to do it. Starting tomorrow. I looked up at the sign for room 137 and nodded my head to affirm that we had arrived. He reached out his hand. Make it real. Shake on it. He gave me a serious look I hadn't seen before. I reached my hand out to his. I promise, I said as I matched his seriousness. He smiled. Beautiful. I'm excited for you. We'll catch up soon. Thank you. I'm excited too. I'll see you later. With that, he headed into room 137 and I finished my walk down the hall to engineering class just in time before the late bell rang. Scene. So there it is, my friends. So obviously, as you can see, the story speaks for itself here. We are back in the school environment, kind of this normal world, but we can see now some seeds that have been planted and even some things now coming to fruition. You know, Johnny just moved to this part of town, and now he's finally starting at our school. So he's a new kid in school, and obviously we already know each other. And so we have this walk to class, and then I'm able to share about my experience with trying to wake up early, and it didn't work out. And then he provides a little gem here with this gong practice, which we will see will become a very important piece of the puzzle here. This idea of tiny actions repeated consistently over a long period of time, and how with this gong practice, which again, you know, this is something that I do and have done personally, like many gongs. And Johnny right now, currently, is within his first gong. And it's kind of cool within the story because there's a lot of factual elements, even though the specifics are not 100% accurate historically. You know, like really these roles are kind of reversed in real life, in the sense that, you know, I'm the one that kind of brought up the idea of the gong to Johnny, and Johnny's the one that's actually currently right now within his gong waking up at 5:45 a.m. every day. So things are a little reversed, but obviously within the context of the story, just allowing what's coming through and maintaining this flow. But either way, this idea of the gong, of these non-negotiable, repeated, consistent actions over a long period of time, and beyond the actual thing that you choose to do, whether that is some kind of meditation, whether that is some kind of act or behavior like waking up earlier, or songwriting, which I'm currently engaged in right now as a gong practice, and going outside, doing some kind of nature work, or just exploring being in nature, whatever that looks like for you. The key thing, though, and something that the story, this episode specifically, is now highlighting, is identifying what that high leverage item is for you. And there may be multiple. And within the life tutorial course and within the optimal evolution pathway, the curriculum, we get into this concept of key processes and identifying your key processes, which are essentially, what are the things that I must have in my life that are the most important for me to have, that are high leverage items in the sense that if I can just do these things, that they have a big carryover to a lot of other things. So, for instance, waking up early, as we've already said, could be a catalyst for a lot of other downstream effects. You wake up early, maybe that turns into, now I have this space for some kind of meditation or spiritual practice. Now I have the space to make sure I have food prepared for the day, and being able to have breakfast. And now I have this space to maybe even do a workout before I start my day. So, just this act of waking up earlier and having that be non-negotiably consistent on a daily basis now opens up this whole new world of possibilities. And for me personally, training is one of those key processes, in the sense that if I prioritize training, then inevitably I'm prioritizing my sleep, I'm prioritizing my recovery, I'm prioritizing my mind and emotions, my mental emotional management. I am prioritizing my relationships. I'm prioritizing my spiritual practices. I'm prioritizing my nutrition. So all of these things are related to me feeling like I'm taking care of myself and my environment well enough to be able to train at the level that I choose to train at. So that's a high leverage action item for me, because if I'm not taking care of these different elements related to the key process of training, then I notice a direct correlation of training. And that's where these very physical actions can be huge catalysts for your spiritual development, because you can use them as a gauge. And again, with training, an easy example is lifting 400 pounds, like a deadlift or hell, a clean and jerk, in the sense that your capacity to lift that weight, something so primal and something so physical, can act as a gauge to let you know how you are doing with these other areas in your life. Because 400 pounds doesn't give a shit about how spiritual you think you are, about how awake and how tapped in you think you are, about how many books you've read about God, about all your ideas. 400 pounds is going to be 400 pounds. And that's why using this very physical seeming limitation, this structure, to be a gauge can be very powerful, because it's this direct feedback loop. Okay. So another one of those processes for me is teaching, like literally what I'm doing right now, to where I know if I'm prioritizing this, as a teacher, I take responsibility and have a certain level of integrity within myself to be congruent with what I am sharing and how I am living. Because, if I'm saying all this shit, but I'm not living this shit, then there's a disconnect in my capacity to be an effective and authentic teacher. So by me teaching, it is not only helping me to learn, because I'm reinforcing these concepts and ideas, and obviously I'm getting to be of service by sharing and teaching these things. And then it's also holding me accountable, because if I'm choosing to share these things and teach these things within my own being and level of integrity, I need to make sure that I'm actually living this shit. Okay? Another one for me is designing, which is, the space that I take and create for myself to really just envision, see the big picture, design systems, come up with different ideas for how to integrate all of these different elements. Because that's the thing too, you can have these multiple processes, you're training, teaching, creating music, and designing. You can have these different key processes. And at first, we can create systems. And this is what we do in the life tutorial course. We can create systems that allow you to nurture these different elements, but they're still kind of separate. And that's okay at first. But as you nurture these different elements, I think of them as spheres of influence. As you nurture these different spheres, these spheres grow. And as these spheres grow, you start to notice their connection, and you start to see how they overlap with one another. And then from that, you start to be able to synthesize and integrate these different processes as part of just this one path. And in that way, the training informs the music informs the design work informs the teaching, and everything just feeds in on itself to the point where, as you continue to nurture these spheres, they just become one thing. The training is the music. The training is the design work. The training is the teaching. The teaching is the music. They all come together. And that's, for me, what that practically looks like is these live performances that I'm hosting. I call them a performance workshop, where I take the story, and then I take the music, and then I take the artwork, and then I take the acting, and I take the lessons and the teaching and these practical tools, and they're all blended together into one experience. And so right now, in this first performance workshop that it will be coming up on May 10th here, is a culmination of episode 1. So episode 1, we've got the story of episode 1, and then there's the song of episode 1, and then there are certain lessons, teachings related to episode 1 that have corresponding exercises, like practical things to do. And that all comes together, with song, with dance, with, really this ceremonial element, kind of integrating all of these things together. And for me, not only is that an expression of what I feel like is my unique offering of service that's aligned with my own unique genius, but it's also utilizing these different modes of expression, for me, is helping to enhance and optimize, maximize my capacity to communicate the essence and the message. Because, a song by itself is powerful. A story by itself is powerful. Acting out a script by itself is powerful. Having different lessons and having different actionable exercises is very powerful. But imagine combining all of that together, and combining in a way where there's not this detraction from any one of the elements, but they synergistically come together to where everything is feeding and helping to establish harmony and maximizing the effectiveness of all of the different elements. So that's currently where I'm at right now, but just kind of tying that all back in together, that's the power of the gong. That's the power of choosing just one thing. And again, we're just starting. Choosing just one thing and making it simple enough, yet powerful enough to where you can truly just hone in on that. And then the gene keys is the ninth gene key, which I've spoken about before. It's one that's really been resonating for me and kind of deepening within me recently. And the ninth gene key, the shadow, is inertia. I mean, it's really all about establishing a groove. And, I talked about this in the last episode, these repeated actions. And so we're kind of in that same theme right now. So you like drawing upon that energy helps to open the door to all of these different possibilities, because even just that act of consistently showing up for something every single day, especially when you're very clear about what that thing is and you've identified that it is a very high leverage item for you, just who you become in that process. And this is the hero's journey, y'all. It's not, maybe it starts as I'm trying to go get this thing out here, but then inevitably as you go through the journey, you realize that what's out there is just a mirror of what's going on inside of you. And then as you recognize that, your sense of self begins to expand to where it's all inside of you. Everything is inside of you because you are everything. And so, from that state of awareness of the connection of everything and then the unification of everything, that is ultimately the hero's journey and the process of the journey in itself, where the transformation lies. Because yes, there's the physical, the tangible, the manifestation of the journey itself. But if you read any good book or watch any good movie that's based upon this hero's journey, which most of them are, then what really resonates most with us is not so much the external thing or the achievement, the result, the goal that's accomplished, the vision that's realized. It is the transformation, the metamorphosis that happens to the hero or the heroine along the way. And so again, choosing something that acts as an anchor for that process and who you become by anchoring in that process, that is where the real magic lies. And that's, again, being able to blend and to marry seemingly at times separate things within, you have this physical experience and then you have this, these spiritual feelings and intuition and guidance, and you can blend both together where, you are consciously choosing your physical catalyst, your physical feedback devices to continue to feed and enhance and develop yourself spiritually, which then as you feed and enhance and develop yourself and nourish yourself spiritually, that opens up your capacity to manifest and to realize whatever your goal, your vision, your specific tangible result is on the physical level. And then the more you're able to harness that capacity of manifestation and aligning your free will to the divine will of just what is unfolding and just what is, it just reinforces itself. And then you just this is literally, alchemy. This is magic here, where the seemingly unexplainable, unknowable, the spiritual essence is now there's becoming more and more of this clear path of the unmanifest into the manifest. And as the unmanifest is involving and forming the manifest is in reaching up and growing and evolving to the unmanifest. That's why I had this saying I did. By the way, if you're on Instagram, I've been doing these daily transmissions that coincide with the weekly transmissions that I do. But the other day, I said that consciousness informs itself into matter so that matter can evolve to experience itself as consciousness. And that's this, dichotomy, the seeming dichotomy of involution and evolution, spirit reaching into matter and matter reaching up into spirit. Okay. So yeah, that's really where we're at right now. Continuing to follow along with this story. And I would invite you to, if you're not already, go into the Life Collective Nation. It's free to get in there. It's just really just a container for, all these different things that I reference, specifically the events. Like for me, the events is really where the culmination of all of these things are. And the thing that carries, the things that carry the most accessibility and power, just this direct live experience. Okay. So I invite you to go and check that out. And then the free course is also in there. And then if you feel called to it, if you're ready for it, then getting access into the next cohort of the Optimal Athlete Program, which is kind of like our flagship educational program that helps you to practically identify what is most important to you, identify your key processes, and create systems in your life, create structure in your life that helps to maximize the flow of your life and the expression of your genius in whatever unique ways and unique gifts that you feel called to express that in. Okay. So it's all in there. And I just like this podcast and everything. It's all, I give it away. Like I truly, it's just my calling to be able to provide as much as I possibly can and to be of service as much as I possibly can. And through that, just, because the giving is the receiving for me. So I know when I'm giving to others, I'm really giving to myself. And as I give to myself, I'm giving to others. And so just this act of giving, I feel is, that's really the true currency. Generosity is the currency of abundance. So as I'm able to grow and more myself, it puts me in a position to be able to give back more and more and more. And the way that I have found that is aligned to me and how I approach all this is, like, I understand that because of this paradigm we're in where, money holds this idea, this concept holds so much weight and so much power. And it, it is this kind of symbol of exchange here. And so because of that, there are opportunities to contribute, and even beyond, because obviously, where we're at right now, that helps us to continue to build systems that don't really require that to thrive. But even beyond that, some people, it's helpful to have some kind of investment in that typical sense to hold yourself accountable to the process. But for me, the way that I have been developing and the approach that's been helpful for me is just really the fact that I give all this shit away, and the ones that are actually ready to receive it, I will gladly, give everything I have to help you if you're willing to actually do this work without feeling like there needs to be some kind of convincing or some kind of, incentive, some kind of carrot that needs to be dangled, but you're like truly ready to do this work. I love working with those kind of people. And, if you feel like you need all this persuasion and convincing and you're just not ready, like, I'm not going to go chase you down, and I don't want to have to go chase you down. I don't care to have to go chase you down. And at the same time, I do hold a responsibility within myself to be as an effective of a message sharer, a marketer, if you will, to provide maximal opportunity for you to engage in this process. All right. So that's what I got for you today. As always, it's a pleasure to share. And I hope you're getting value and continuing to follow along with this story here as it unfolds, because it is unfolding indeed. And I look forward to sharing more with you again very soon. Blessings, 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 my friends. Peace.